Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. A Karen tries to get the owner's daughter fired. So I'm not 100% sure if I'm putting this on the right one, but I hope I have. So background, this was about 2 years ago when my dad owned a pub. I was 14 and old enough to chip in by taking orders for the restaurant, cleaning tables, etc. And one day we just opened and my dad had gone down to the basement to change one of the kegs. As I was sitting at the bar talking to our new employee, showing them what to say, my dad had taught me himself and the employee was barely out of college. The employee asked if it was okay if she quickly went to the bathroom since there weren't any customers. It was only about 4 o'clock and locals don't normally start pouring in until about 6. So I said it was okay. So I'm drinking my cola when Karen arrives. "Excuse me?" "Hello?" I say. "I want a..." She lists her drink. "And be quick with it." I tell her I'm sorry, I'm not working. She cuts me off. "Stop lying! I've seen you clean the tables. I know you work here." "I'm sorry, Miss Karen, but I'm not working today, and even if I was, I couldn't get your drink since I'm not even allowed behind the bar." "Stop lying! You're here so much, you must be working. Get me my drink!" "Miss Karen, She cut me off again. "You're so rude. I know the owner, you know. I could get you fired." At that point, the new employee returns and says, "Hello, welcome to XXN. What can I get for you?" "Get me the owner! I want this girl fired!" I gave the new employee a look that basically said, "Go get my dad." I was holding in tears at this point, and the new employee could see that. "I'll just grab him from downstairs. One moment." "Good." Well, it turns out my dad had been upstairs the entire time Karen had been here, and he heard it all. "What's the meaning of this?" he firmly asked Karen. "Mr. R. It's my dad's last name. "This employee of yours needs to be..." My dad cut her off. "She's not my employee." "What? I've seen her clean up and take orders." Dad cut her off again. "That's because she's my daughter." Karen turned to look at me, who was still trying to calm down, and speaks, "If you really are his daughter, then why couldn't you get me a drink?" Me and my dad were shocked and in disbelief by this, but I managed to speak, "Because I'm 14. It's illegal." Karen went pale before she could speak. My dad said, "Now get out of my pub. You're banned for the rest of the month." We haven't seen her, mainly because about 10 months later, my dad sold the pub. And our next story. Contractors screws me out of $1,500. Good luck finding someone else to do the work. I got hosed by a residential construction contractor years ago. We'll call him Mark. I'd done 3 projects for Mark prior to this one and had no issues. For this project, Mark wanted the plans for a remodel and add-on based off some photos and hand sketches. It was about $1,500 in work, which was a lot at the time. I delivered the first draft. Mark was quite happy with the result and would be consulting with the client over revisions or acceptance. He said he'd get back to me as soon as he had some news about the project. Typically, I would just run a tab on something like this, as there's no limit on revisions and updates until the project is finalized. Everyone understood that the meter is running when I'm working. In nearly a decade of this line of work, I've never had any problem with anyone paying. So after delivering the first draft to Mark, I waited on the revisions. It was a pretty decent-sized project for me at the time, and I was looking forward to it. I waited and waited and waited. 3 weeks went by. He wasn't returning my calls, so I sent him a bill. 2 days later, Mark called and said he didn't get the job, so he wouldn't be paying. Whoa! We didn't have an agreement of me getting paid if he gets paid. I get paid for my time regardless, and never work on a bid arrangement. He still refused, so I told him to take a hike. Also, let some other freelance CAD guys know about him. We were competitors, but there was so much work we would refer projects to each other if we were overloaded. I resigned myself to losing that money. It wasn't actually money lost, as all I had invested was my time, but that's time I could have spent working on another project that actually paid. My time is where I make my money. I didn't have materials I would mark up or subs I managed. I was a one-guy operation, so yeah, it sucked. 6 months later, Mark calls, all buddy-like with me. He has a big project with a tight deadline and knows I'm the man for it. He's laying it on thick with me too, like I'm a great friend he hadn't talked to in a while, telling me that I'm the best at my job and so on. I knew exactly where this was headed, so I played nice with him, and I'm sure Mark thought it was all water under the bridge. The next day, I sent Mark a bid that was high, about 50% more than my typical rate, tacked $1,500 onto it, and told him I wanted it all up front. Mark called 10 minutes later and wanted to know why the price was so high and payment required up front. Those were not the terms of our previous projects, so I explained to him as he seemed to be suffering from selective amnesia. Mark starts begging me to do the project. This isn't a bid, he claims. He actually has the project in hand. Mark's also apparently having trouble finding someone to take on the project. Apparently, he'd managed to stiff all the good operators in the area and worked his way back to me. I told him I'd be more than happy to take on any project he had once the $1,500 was paid, and all further projects would be paid up front. I never heard from him again. He didn't get the project either, even though he claimed it was locked up. Mark's wife actually owned the business. It had an effeminate name, and they used this woman-owned construction business as a selling point in ads and at trade shows. I'd guess 2/3 of their clients were landed just on that piece of deception. The wife was mainly just the face of the company and the marketing point. She wasn't involved in the business beyond that. So when Mark started complaining about difficulty getting subs to work with, she started calling around. I heard through the grapevine that she was told off several times. Anyone who's worked with a construction subcontractor knows they can be rather blunt, to say the least. They weren't just screwing the CAD guys, subs in every category had been stiffed. A year later, Mark and his wife were sued by multiple subs and customers. Mark really screwed up a few houses, putting in the wrong flooring, getting paint schemes wrong, and so on. They lost these court cases and tried to get out of it by filing bankruptcy. They got a few dismissed, but not all of them. Last I heard, they got divorced, and he was stuck with a lot of the debt because she was able to prove she wasn't involved in some of the decisions. But she had some debt too. And our next story. Poor parking garage behavior preps prospective employee for poor performance evaluation. I used to work for a large state agency, and after 5 years had become a middle manager. My office was in the state office tower downtown, and parking was scarce, but middle management and up got reserve parking in the garage attached to our building. This was a great perk since it's a cold state, and on days that the tower garage is full, you have to park at a private garage about a mile away and walk. One day I had to run a few errands and pulled up to the garage a little later than usual. By the time I'd gotten there, the sign on the garage said it was full, but I had a badge that let me go in anyway and drive down to my reserved spot. There was a man at the gate who was trying to get in despite the sign that said it was full. When I realized he didn't have a badge, I backed up a little bit and honked my horn to let him know he could back up. This infuriates him. He gets out of his car, flips me off, hurls a few choice words my way. As he backs up out of the spot, I pull up to the gate and he yells some more words my way about how stupid I am and that I can't read that the garage is full. I ignore him and assume he's just some guy there to have a meeting at one of the dozen or so agencies in our building, and I park my car. I get to my desk and get an email from HR that one of the upper managers was sick and that I needed to cover down on some interviews. Interviews in our agency start with a group of prospective employees working on a small project together, and then the candidates sit in front of a panel individually. I walk into the room where all the candidates are sitting, and there I see him. Parking jerk. I was in my car, so he didn't get a great look at me, but I knew exactly who it was. The candidates introduce themselves and get to work on their small project. Parking jerk was trying to control the entire process, but they successfully completed the project as a team. The panel then asks all the candidates to go sit in the hall while we discuss and would call them in individually when we were ready. Once they were all out of the room, I giddily told my coworkers about my interaction with Parking Jerk, and they die laughing. We call him in first and begin asking him basic employment questions. He's otherwise a strong candidate, but was very full of himself. The rest of the panel goes first. Finally, it's my turn. Me. How do you react to stress? PJ. I handle it just fine. I'm a very level-headed person. Me. Come on, everyone gets a little flustered at some point. PJ. Not me. Cool as a cucumber. So you never do anything like get out of your car and yell at a stranger? Silence from PJ. Or call them names and tell them to learn how to effing read? The blood drains from his face. Do you realize this job puts you in front of the media frequently and someone is always watching? Do you realize that if you were to work here, your actions would reflect not just on you, but they would reflect on your director, the department as a whole, and state government? Do you think that if you were in my position, you would hire someone who behaved as rudely as you did? He hung his head in shame, I think I may not be cut out for this position. This doesn't necessarily mean you're a bad person, but you may not be ready for this job. He was deflated. I think that this was really the first time someone had held him accountable for his actions. He didn't get that job, but a few years later, I saw him working for another agency, and by all accounts, it sounds like he'd learned his lesson. And our last story. I smell like hot garbage for a reason. I live in a small Australian town and volunteer for the local fire brigade. The local pub is just down the road from the CFA, and often after a call-out, we'll go there for a drink. After a particularly annoying fire in which a gem to our community dumped his hot ash in her rubbish bin, the crew and I walked across the road to get a beer or two and unwind. This was a Saturday, and my local pub often has people come from cities out to the country. The call-out had woken me up from a nap, and I threw on my jeans and wore my CFA Country Fire Authority polo, which I keep at the station in case the shirt I'm wearing is too nice to get dirty. The black jeans and black polos asking for trouble. But I was too tired to understand this. An older lady wearing nice clothes, you can pick up the non-locals as they dress up nice for a Saturday Parma for some reason, grabs my arm and pulls me next to the table to complain that the chips weren't good enough. I smell like hot garbage as I just had to rake through a ton of burning trash to put it out. I give her the usual "I don't work here" lady, and she seems either not to care or refuses to understand and continues to talk crap about her Parma to me. Tells me that us millennials have no respect and that I should be fired. However, the captain had just shouted around, so I walked away hoping she'd yell at some unfortunate staff instead. The bartender, good mate of mine, informed me like 5 minutes later that the woman demanded that I be told off for showing up for work smelling like crap and not helping her. She also refused to believe that I didn't work there, even though I'm clearly drinking at the bar with other stinky people and wearing a polo with the words "Fire Rescue" on the back. She eventually left and made a fuss about rude and filthy staff and that she will never be back. Good. I truly did smell like crap, though. Side note, yes, I am the guy who got yelled at during a fire in a previous installment of Old Ladies Yell at Polo Wearers. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video to the end, and I'll see you in the next one.